So, T-Man, I'm actually gonna do this. I wanna Tristan sent me a message about writing and communication, and that made my thoughts go back many years ago, and in a crazy way, I want to share this with you guys for those of you who's interested in this type of thing, which you clearly are. I was thinking about writing. You know, I've been writing things from before I could write. I remember as a small boy, man, I think I must have been 6 or 7 years old, on the farm. I would go to Opa's study, and I would sit and I would write, and I couldn't write, of course, but I would have a sheet of paper in front of me, and I would just make it will feel as if I'm writing. And I remember and I would do that many nights, and then I will tell the story in my head as I'm writing, and somehow magically I imagined the thoughts being transmitted to those scribbles that I'm writing on the page. I couldn't write at all, and I would when Jan and the kids were and Tannie Magna were visiting on the farm as well, and then in the living room they would sit and they would all kuier with Opa and Oma and my Opa and Oma, Opa Eben and Oma Susan. And then I would run with this piece of paper to Jan, and I would jump on his lap, and then he would read the story, and he will of course make it up as he goes. So that was my my earliest memory. And then as soon as I started writing, as soon as I knew how to write, I started writing stories. And I would write, little comics, and I would write stories. The first story, the actual proper story that I wrote, I must have been 8 years old, was the White Eskimo. I remember it to this day, and it's about a Caucasian man who migrated up to the northern Europe, where the Eskimos were living. And he joined their ranks, and it's about his adventures with these Eskimos. And I remember learning about writing, how to, in Afrikaans, the motorische moment in the story, where everything unfolds, and the build-up, the sketching of the characters, the setting of the stage, the importance of that, setting it up. And storytelling is as important as it is in writing, and then moving from your beginning to your middle to your end, building it up to the end, the climax, the intrigue, all those kind of things. And I don't think I'm the world's best writer, but I love writing, and I've always loved writing, and yes, that's my experience with writing. So let's bring the concept of God into writing, and apart from my love for writing, another love that I had from an early age was the thought of God. And it fascinated me, and it intrigued me, and I had lots of fun with the concept of God. And I could never quite bring everything together. All these thoughts, I couldn't bring it together. And there was something about, you see, what we did is that we started, as humans, we developed words, and we developed not just words describing things, but we started modifying those describing words when we developed adjectives, and we developed the doing words, the verbs, and then we developed different tenses. Not only am I doing it now, but I did it yesterday, I'm going to do it in the future, or I am doing it, I'm still continuously doing it, and it's not a completed task yet. And of course we we invent these things and then we worship it. So we started worshiping the word, the written word. First we worshiped the spoken word. Then we learned how to write the words down, and then we worshiped the written word. And then we learned logic. And we learned how to pull things together. And this is where I think a lot of the essence of Reformed theology sits, is in the belief, Catholic theology as well, but predominantly Reformed theology took this concept, the concept of Plato and Aristotle and Thomas Aquinas, I'm not sure how you say it, but he became the big founder of Catholic theology. But the Catholics never made this the focal point of their worship. What the Reformers did is they took the systemization, the fact that you could take, there's information out there in the Bible, there's data, and then they started seeing patterns. So what they were doing, they were doing nothing else but to take data and change it into information. They would take the seemingly random, unconnected events, and they will see connections, and they will join them together in a logical way, and they will create patterns, right? And that patterns became what theology is founded upon, both in the Catholic Church and in the Reformed tradition, but predominantly in the Reformed tradition, that became the focus. And so churches and pastors around the world, they in the Reformed tradition, the ones who knows the Bible and is able to see these patterns clearest, they are revered and they are highly regarded. But there's something deeply disturbing about that fact. There's something that doesn't make sense to me. So let me go back to when I was studying. I was studying many things in my life. I studied accounting, and then I studied applied maths for a time. I studied chemistry for a while. I continued with accounting, and I never completed my degree in any of these things. But I had some great first and second year courses in many of these subjects, economics and accounting and chemistry and what have you. And that gave me a lot of foundation, a lot of broad view of life. And when I was studying, I remember that I said that I'm not going to study. Was never my object, because knowledge without application is not knowledge, and I didn't want to gain knowledge for the sake of gaining knowledge. That was never my goal, and I forgot that I did that. And this concept of how people see the Bible, that it is the extraction of the transformation of data into information, whether it's valid or not, whether it's let's forget about that fact for a second. It turns into a very emotional argument very quickly. So let's leave the emotion out of it. The fact that we change the data, raw data, into information, and whether that information is valid or not, because there's a whole lot of presuppositions that encircles it, that allows us to change the data into a certain set of information sets. And if you want to be too harsh about that, remember that even mathematics is founded on theorems and postulates, and that same logic is that same thing is found in the Bible in terms of presuppositions. And I will say it's a lot more shaky than the theorems and axioms of mathematics, but that is a different discussion. In fact, it's super shifting sand in terms of biblical theology, at least Reformed theology. I think it's far less moving sands in terms of the Catholic theology, but there's tendencies of course of this in the Catholic theology as well. But the point that I want to make is that what we did was we started to invent things in our minds. We invented the concept of God. So I'm gonna be very bold, and I'm gonna say, to the question, do I believe in God? No, I don't believe in God. But hear me out. There's another reality in life, and that is that there's a reality. I'm talking, I'm living, I'm experiencing, I'm loving. And in my experiences and in my living, I experience the divine, even in human love. But that is not a mental decision that I have to make. God doesn't exist to me because it's something that I make up in my brain. That's why I say I don't believe in God. But what I realized over the last couple of weeks is that God speaks to me, and I'm not going to go into how. Only Krista knows. But the experience of God is very, very close and very real to me. It's not something that I have to believe. In fact, I don't believe it. Because if I say I believe it, it's something that I made up in my brain. And the experience of love is not something that I made up in my mind. My love for Krista is not something that I made up in my mind. It is something that exists in me, here and now. Tangible. I can touch it. It is that real. Do I have to believe that it's there? No. I don't have to believe it's there because it is part of me every single moment of my being. And so the where I think predominantly Reformed theology is completely missing the point. It takes this concept of changing data to information, and it glorifies that, and that becomes the Pope. The Pope which they accuse the Roman Catholic Church of. That is the thing that they worship. Not all of them, of course not. But, as a system. So, that's where this idea that through a systematic understanding of Scripture, by taking the patterns and seeing the patterns, that we can know God. No, you cannot know God through those patterns. I don't know God through those patterns. It informs me. It helps me to interpret, but I know God through my daily experience with Him. Every single day. So this concept came full circle to me then, and the belief system that I had, that knowledge without what is the thing that I looked for most in my life, is for actual practical experience. I don't want to know something theoretically. It is of little use to me. I want to know it practically. It must actually work. I want to work out the recipe, and then I want to go down to the factory and I want to do the recipe. And whether the recipe is valid or not has got absolutely nothing to do with the Excel sheet. It's got everything to do with what happens in the factory. That is the only thing that matters. So I see even the huge danger here, where especially the Indians come and they worship this idea of extracting data. But data is just an approximation of reality. And it's the biggest frustration that I have. It is not reality. Why don't you engage with reality on a more fundamental, more personal way, instead of in an indirect way through theories? And no matter how close approximation, data is useful. Yes, I'm not denying that. And changing the data into information, yes, it is valuable. But more valuable than that, is there a way that I can more directly interact with the reality? That is where I want to be. I don't want to sit in an office dealing with approximations. Because as valuable as that is, it can only take you that far. And the surprising thing is, it can take you a lot less further than you would think it can. Similarly to the experience of God. So it's Armin's confirmation tomorrow. And I asked him about theology and about matters of theology. And his answers were very tentative. And I absolutely love that. Because more than anything else, what confirmation is, it is an experience of the reality of God. It is not even an experience of the reality of faith. It is a reality, because if there's a reality, I don't have to have faith. I don't have to believe that God is there. If my experience of Him is on a daily basis, a moment by moment basis, why do I have to believe? Why is there what shall I call it, an interface? Why is there an interface necessary between me and God? And that interface is faith. Why do I need that interface? I don't need an interface, because I experience Him moment by moment every single day. And there's things about my experience of Him that doesn't make sense to me, but it doesn't have to make sense to me. I don't seek for everything to make sense to me. So it's as if this whole thing went full circle with me, that my what I was doing in my writing is that I'm perpetuating something that I worship, even as a child. I worship writing. I worship the ability to write. But the ability to write is nothing else but taking data and changing it into information. But the way that I change it into information is also dependent on what I want that information to say. Many people accuse statistics of that, which is not completely true. In fact, it's completely non-true. But there's elements of that that's got that tendency, that you can make statistics say anything. It's not quite, you don't quite understand statistics, but it definitely appears like that to the novice. But it is this engagement with something that we worship. We invent something and then we worship it. We invent something and we worship it. And as humans, in our minds, in our cognitive evolution, we came to a stage, and as we go through the stage, and this concept of we invent it and we worship it, that is something that Krista taught me from her perspective from anthropology. And what is more important than the absolute reality, my day-to-day reality? Now, there's many benefits, there's value. I'm not taking away the value. I'm not saying there's no value in extracting or changing data to information. All I'm saying is it can never be the ultimate be-all and end-all. It can never be where our thinking stops. It can never be the ultimate thing, because behind that there is a reality that's far greater than the approximations that we do through our manipulation of data. That is my point. That's my point about God. That's why I'm saying I don't believe in God, because I don't need that interface. I don't need belief to be between me and my experience of God. It is that real. And what is exciting about confirmation is that it is one more step. It is a significant step of becoming, of that experience of God becoming. Now you don't have to just see it from afar anymore. Now you experience it in reality. And that's massive. Okay, so that's my musings on the subject.